Good morning and welcome to Exploring Glorantha. I am JM, and with me as always is the Lankor my rune priest, Evan. That's right, you gotta get you a Alright, fans, we need to get Evan a fake bronze beard so that he can appear in costume for the Lankor my sage. Um, Thankfully, I'm in my Isseris costume because my mouth is moving. So, today we're going to finish up what was supposed to be one episode and then was going to be two, but has become a three-part overview of the first age of
That's right.
Glorantha. There's so much good stuff in there. And as I said, when I first got to interview um, Jeff Richard back in the day on the Iconic podcast, I was able to talk with him about the myths that really got me invested in Glorantha, and that was definitely Arcat and Gabaji. Like that struggle, that cycle. I just want I mean they're putting out a ton of great books. Just in case you're listening, I just need a poetic cycle in heroic pentameter of Arcat and Gabaji. I have a guy if you want us to work on this. But speaking of my guy, before we get started, um, if you have not heard about it, please consider go checking out Strange Owl Games' new Kickstarter that is going online. I just put the link down there. It'll be in the show notes on YouTube. This is Amboria role playing in the world under starlight, and if you like Glorantha, you like the depth and the mythic nature. Richard has been building this world for 20 years. He has been writing the poetry for it. He has been doing this in the way that the old lays and stories were built, where the stories were continually reworked by new poets. And so he has 7 or 8 versions of the same cycle written at different points in the history. This is a role-playing game like none other. It's highly poetic. Don't let that be a barrier of entry. It is totally approachable. It uses the clash system, which if you follow the God Learners podcast, Evan and I went on there to talk about the clash system. It was used in Jackals, sort of my Bronze Age alternate ancient Near East history game that takes inspiration, is inspired by Glorantha and RuneQuest. So it's fully funded. They're working on stretch goals right now. Evan's a friend, or Richard's a friend of the show. I am involved with this heavily. So if you haven't heard about it, please go check it out. Whew, that was my announcement. Before we get any further, Evan, you have an announcement. How was Chaosium Con, man?
Chaosium Con was great, except for one thing. JM wasn't there. It was it. I missed him greatly, being JM's wingman, and I put myself in that position because JM is the representative of the talking god. I'm just the knowing god guy. But no, it was a lot of fun. It was unexpected highlight. I had a long conversation with Sandy Peterson's wife, who is delightful.
Yeah.
Just got to do, it was a little bit longer of a con this year. I got to play some. I got to run some things.
Mm-hmm.
And
Now, in your thing that you ran, because I got to read through it,
yeah,
you had Troll Ball as
I did.
a 13th Age Glorantha set piece for your
Yeah,
adventure. How did Troll Ball work out?
good. I think that it is not yet great. I probably need to go back to the drawing board a little bit, but I am super grateful to all my players who dove in and played with gusto.
Was Gusto one of the
And
trolls?
uh, no, but although I should probably sub that in.
That's right.
But
That was free. You can just have that one.
thank you, I
Yeah.
appreciate it. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Um, but I think can be refined some. At like mini con games. This was a first draft, but the people, I had 2 sets of players who went through it. Seemed like everybody had fun, and I got some notes back from Ludo. Ludo was in my first first game, and I think that it can be improved. But Troll Ball was a great centerpiece, and worked really well in 13th Age. Again, I think I can sharpen it up and probably talk to you about making it more deadly. So,
Ooh.
ooh,
All right. So today we're talking about the Gabaji Wars. The Gabaji Wars ended the first age. And here's the thing. Each of the ages of Glorantha, we could have spent an entire 3 episodes just on Arcat. But that's not the goal. We are the come and learn about Glorantha. If you want to go deeper, head over to our, I don't want to call them a sister show, but definitely partners in love of Glorantha show, the God Learners podcast. I'll put a link to them in the show notes. Future Evan, remind JM to put a link in the show notes. So, at the end of the first age, we have seen the rise of the Unity Council, its fall, the first council's fall from sort of this perfected utopian state. We've seen them become warlike. The second council forms, the creation, the hubris of trying to create a new perfect being, a new god. And again, as we've talked about, there's this idea of the cyclical nature of time in Glorantha that keeps coming back to this desire to go back to the god time, is this point of perfection that is forever unattainable, which we see throughout the religions and mythologies of our own world, right? The attempt to return to this golden age, and how really the attempts of man end up crashing down in the end because we're imperfect. And so we see Nicelor becoming, or always was, or Arcat's propaganda machine was better. It's very ambiguous as to what actually happened with Nicelor and who Gbaji was. But from the point of view of those in Dragon Pass, Nicelor was revealed as Gbaji the Deceiver by Arcat, the hero out of the West. And we have hit the wars where Arcat and Gbaji have this climactic battle. One survives. And again, depending on your point of view, we'll get to that. Who and what survives the final conflict is open to interpretation, and is one of those points where your Glorantha may vary, and that's what makes this setting so cool. So, Evan, I've set the stage. Take us a little deeper.
all right. Well, so when last we left our hero, he had
Capital H.
arrived. Yes, there we go. He had arrived in central Genertella, in the Dragon Pass, or preparing to head to Dragon Pass. He had been rescued from hell, where he had been killed several years before. He had been bodily dismembered, and his soul had been consigned to a hell by the followers of Nicelor, Gabaji, never to return, except that a brave Orlanthi farmer who turned himself into a hero reenacted for the first time since the dawn the Lightbringer quest and completed it. Now, from the title, the Lightbringer quest, you would think, oh, well, the purpose of the quest is to bring back light, right? Because that's what they did with the first one. They brought the sun back. But the Lightbringer quest is more subtle than that. It is to restore a certain kind of order, and you don't really know what you're going to bring back. It
right,
will
because
be something.
when Orlanth brings back Yelm, time comes with it.
Right.
And so the order is restored, but not in the way that anyone could have anticipated.
Right. It doesn't restore the Green Age. It doesn't restore the God time. It creates something new. that is, a necessary evolution, perhaps,
Mm-hmm.
to restore order to the world. So Harmast brings back Arcat, and rescues him from hell, and Arcat starts to learn from Harmast the secrets of hero questing, and then goes further. He
Mm-hmm.
surpasses, the teacher, and in part it is because he has already gone through a progression of different cultures and cult secrets,
Mm-hmm.
and started to see the whole from the different perspectives of the parts. He starts out as a Brithini, he transitions to become a man of all, he then initiates into Orlanth and then Humacht, um, and from there they give up trying to conquer through Rallios and come around to Slantos, and then into Kythela, what we now would consider the Holy Country, and once again faces off against forces led by Pelagio the Iron Vrock, who
Mm-hmm.
had killed him. But Pelagio is retreating, and it is there in at the opening of Dragon Pass where he really becomes deeply embedded with his relationship to the trolls, who
Now,
have been resisting.
if I may
Yeah,
interrupt real quick,
yeah,
we keep going back to this cyclical or fractal nature of Gloranthan structure.
yes,
We have in each ending of the age, chaos returns because that's the cycle of the god time. And then chaos is hopefully put down. But in each ending of the age, the god time to the first age to the second to the third, there is a decreasing of like a change. It is not the way it was, and most times it seems that the world will continue on in some sort of lesser fashion. But in each case, chaos's defeat and what enables chaos's defeat also enables chaos's return. And what's interesting is as you look at this, Arcat creates this new type of hero questing in order to defeat Gabaji. But his what he does also lays the seeds for the rise of the God Learners in the Second Age, which again brings about an apocalypse. And in their destruction, they lay the seeds for the cult of the Seven Mothers to bring the uh, the Red Goddess into Glorantha. And so we have these like spiral fractals that just keep circling down. It's one of the I don't think you could have intentionally done this on such a scale as Greg did and everybody who has come with Greg on this journey. But I also don't think it happened accidentally. And by that I mean Greg had studied the mythic cycles, the mythic traditions, mythology so deeply that he had this instinctual understanding of like the symbolic fractal nature of reality that he embedded it into Glorantha, and maybe subconsciously as other people joined him they picked up on that and they just kept carrying this cycle forward.
yeah. I think that's right. I think that deeply, also influenced by Joseph Campbell,
Mm-hmm.
who we've and the Jungian view of the sort of collective unconscious consciousness of human beings, um, that there are these deeply embedded archetypes and cycles that reoccur, and whether or not that is um, uh, goes to the fundamental structure of reality, and actual human culture. It is a deeply relatable
Mm-hmm.
kind of structure for an imaginary world, and for story and myth. And Greg deeply understood this, and um, it's kind of like Glorantha is sort of like he kind of planted a garden, and other people have come in to tend it and to add things to it, but the underlying structure has sort of organically grown in this way that he I think through a combination of intuition and deep study and understanding built.
Well,
So yeah,
even your analogy of a garden, right? Every part of the tree is a smaller part, right? That
right.
represents the fractal whole of the tree. Like I think that is a perfect analogy for where we're at. Okay, okay. Sorry, I know
So
I distracted you
I
here.
was like, theory time.
Like we should go on the God Learners podcast and have this.
That's right.
Uh, all right. So at this point, when Arcat is coming back and is fighting, like his comeback is doing the hero quest exploration, it's hard to, at least from the Sartorite point of view, see the goodness in the empire of Gabaji. I mean, I would argue that the lunar view is like, yeah, we've modeled our entire uh, empire after this, but like vampires walking around on the streets as citizens of this empire, like you have the disease masters of Malia were considered, healers, and again, from a certain point of view, right? Malia started off as a healing goddess, a goddess of life that then was twisted. So did Nicelor like bind or attempt to reform Malia, or was this just a sign of his chaotic nature and self-destructed thing? We don't know, but we also have entire cities who are said to have spawned chaos features, which is not a good thing, right? There's this degeneration, this separation of what it means to be human and a part of community, and the Second Council is just rife with at least the outer aspects of chaos, which again, so do the Lunars, but the Lunars say, hey, we've got it under control. There may be some truth to Lysolor having it under control. All right.
Yeah. Well, and another thing, and I have to thank the God learners for mentioning this, is that much like the lunar empire has its boundaries and the actual physical glow line, they hypothesized that perhaps the bright empire also had a similar sort of maybe visible barrier, that the empire of light was not just a metaphor, but in
Mm,
fact that in the lands controlled by Nicelor and his cult, that things might have been brighter there.
yeah.
And so, with Arcat coming, it is a coming of darkness, which ultimately he realizes he needs to embrace in order the next stage to defeating the Empire of Light is to embrace the powers of darkness, which the trolls offer him a pathway towards. And also, they as we talked about last time, they have suffered the most,
Mm-hmm.
and they have sacrificed the most, and they have been the fiercest fighters. Um, and and Arcat had wounds, particularly a deep wound that, in some stories, apparently he met himself on the hero plane and did not recognize himself, and was wounded by a future form of himself hero questing, because that there is no time. It is a paradox that apparently, if you quest enough, you might run into a version of yourself, and because of the way that um, you know questing that way, you take on the attributes of the divine, so you might not be recognizable to yourself. So he apparently had wounded perhaps himself, and a wound that would not heal, but that could be palliated, shall we say,
Mm-hmm.
through this transformation. And so there is an adoption rite by in the cult of Karga, and he submitted to it. He allowed himself to be transformed from a human to lose his humanity and embrace being the darkness man.
Mm-hmm.
And soon after learning the secrets and being embraced by Karga, he then embraced the following of Xerox
Yeah.
Xerox, a god of hatred,
Yep.
but also one of the fiercest opponents of chaos. This berserker god of the trolls. So he our friends at the Godletters described it as min-maxing or multi-classing, and Jorg described it as sort of a serial monogamy of like he would take on a particular identity and he would do that identity to the max. He became the most Orlanthy, but then it was like, oh, not far enough. Now I need to be the most Humakti. Now I need to be the most troll. Now I need to be the most Xerox. And it was in embracing Xerox and just the explosion of violence that cult celebrates, that they really began to make headway against the Bright Empire. There is no showdown between him and Pelagio the Ironed Rock. The trolls wipe out Pelagio's army, and they may have eaten him, but there is no rematch. At that point, Arcat is aiming higher. He doesn't need to. He proved himself by coming back from death. He doesn't need to fight Pelagio again. His target is firmly Gabaji at this point. Now, I want to take us on a little diversion because once
Take us
Arcat becomes a troll and embraces these powers of darkness and really begins to adopt uh, exceptionally destructive methods to overcome the armies of the Bright Empire and to lay waste to its lands as he moves out of Dragon Pass and into Peloria. His friend and his rescuer, Harmast, becomes quite disillusioned, as many Orlanthi do. They hate the Bright Empire, but they start to become terrified of the person who appeared to be their savior. And so Harmast leaves on a second Lightbringer quest to the again, the Lightbringer quest being followed in time was something new. I mean, Harmast was the first to complete it in the full experience of going to the God time, and so from beginning to end, they kind of thought, we're bringing back the light. It's the Lightbringer quest, and we brought back something, and it's gone very dark. So we need to fix that. So he sets off with his companions again to try and get something that will restore the order in a way that is more understandable to them. And before we talk about how that plays out, we need to talk about two people who are called the Sons of Arcat. And these are Gerlant, Flamesword, and Talor, the Laughing Warrior. It's unclear whether or not they're actually biological sons of Arcat, or if during their period of comradeship in fighting Gabaji, that sort of relationship was recognized. But Gerlant is and Taylor are both Western heroes, much like Arcat. They come out of the Western Malchione tradition, although neither are Berthini. And Gerlant is associated with Seshnella, although he is not from the royal line. The royal line dies out, and eventually he founds a new royal line. And Taylor is from Frenella, and had ruled there, and both of them followed Arcat. And in his early battles, although they began to be disillusioned as he abandoned the Malchione ways to take up sort of the barbarian ways of the Orlanthi and becoming Humakti. And Taylor actually was killed by the agents of Gabaji invading into as far as Frenella, although he had organized resistance. And after Arcat was killed, Gerlant went back to Seshnella to try to order things there. But when Arcat came back, it appears that from some stories that Gerlant again led companions and was with Arcat at this period as they invaded up through Dragon Pass and struck into Peloria towards Dorastor, where the jewel of the empire, the Bright Empire, was the great cities and libraries and magical laboratories and everything that was fueling Nysalor's empire. Taylor, not only there was a great romance because Taylor had a beautiful wife that who was also killed by these agents of Nysalor. But he sort of follows the fate of his putative father, being sent to hell, being seen as too much of an opposition to the spread of Nysalor's truth. So they're important because much like Harmast, they are great and important culture heroes and recognized as ascended masters or saints in those Western lands. And it is because of their involvement in the resistance against Gabaji and their great victories and their great moral codes that they epitomize. Plus, also being early rulers of these foundational lands, Frenella and Seshnella. So then, turning our gaze back to 2 years where Harmast is gone, and with increasing ferocity, the armies that are following Arcat, and he is constantly losing armies. People will leave. He will recruit more.
Mm-hmm.
While his fame is comparable, say, to Alexander the Great, the kind of determination that he has in the face of adversity and even loss is sort of more comparable to Roman Republic. The Romans lost a lot, but they just didn't give up.
Right.
That was,
That was kind of
it's
their
like,
thing. Oh, we got destroyed. Let's raise new legions and go try
that's
it
right.
again in a different way. Right.
That's right.
It really was Rome's tenacity
Yes.
and dogged endurance in the face of, I mean, just overwhelming losses that allowed them
Yes.
to grow.
Yes. And so he sort of, as a leader, embodies that sort
Mm-hmm.
of tenacity, just which can be terrifying and almost monstrous in some
Mm-hmm.
ways. That in the face of so much of the horror of war, of fighting monstrosities, that he becomes more and more apparently monstrous
Yeah.
to try and achieve his goals. Yet people followed him,
Yeah.
it cannot have been out of terror. Maybe there were, a whole mix of feelings. Again, going with the lesser evil to fight the greater evil, perhaps. But I think in many ways, the people who followed him, must have been like the soldiers of Alexander, at least at the core. They followed him because he did not give up, and because he was victorious, and seemed to be, on the whole, even though he, having come back from death. I mean, who can be more unbeatable than that? I
Yeah.
mean, despite defeats, uh, always coming back. So they make it into Dorastor, and uh, and
Which ends up being one of my favorite products from
uh,
the early RQ days. And if you like Duraster, there is a great product on Johnstown Compendium that we'll put in the link in the show notes for sort of an updated RQG look at Duraster.
in fact, it's a whole line
Mm-hmm.
of Dorastor products that really fill out and help you build an incredible set of possibilities for terrifying and horrifying adventures in what once was um, the uh, the land of the golden age of the first age. We talked about last time that, for the residents of the Bright Empire, many of them um, felt that it was, the best place to live, the most modern, the most blessed, um, and um, after Arcat gets through with it, it is a cursed and haunted land
Yeah.
filled with chaos horrors, and that's what it is in the Third Age. Um, if I could make one pitch, it would be for some of those seminal RuneQuest 3 products to be made available,
Mm-hmm.
just as they've done the RQ to the now RQ Classics. And I understand, just to put them out, they have a different rule set. You'd have to tweak them
Mm-hmm.
to make them work. But I think that they are valuable,
Or
and they
not
would be
all of them. We're not
viable.
asking for all of them because some of them,
Just, well, no, but
some of them were
the
stinkers.
classic,
But
the
yeah.
no, but the classic products,
Mm-hmm. Sun
Sun
County.
County, um, Shadows on the Borderland, Duraster. Uh, I think there's a few others that haven't been, superseded. Obviously, some of the the box ones, the Gods of Glorantha. We're getting a 10-book.
I know. I'm so excited. That's actually what we're going to be talking about next month.
That's right.
Evan and I are going to be doing our review of
Ooh.
the Prosopedia.
Yep. But there's enough that where there's a sort of a void that could be filled if those products were available.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, Jeff Richard, if you're listening, which I know you might not be, but if you're listening, really heavily consider, and I think if you do it in the low, in a lower cost way, if you make it available on Johnstown or
Mm-hmm.
through a drive through RPG, shall we say, and then maybe a POD option, maybe, but it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have to be. I think people would value just having the information in PDF, and it would bridge uh, some other things that we know there are great products coming, and we
Mm-hmm.
know that they're not coming out until they're fully
Realized.
fashioned, and we appreciate that. But there is some back catalog that I think you could fill in. And Dorastor is a pivotal one there. So
All right, so we've got about 20 minutes left.
yeah,
Let's get to Arcat's confrontation with Gabaji
right,
and Dorastor.
right. So um, the war starts to go badly because
Mm-hmm.
in the Heartland, that is where there's Gabaji's power is at its zenith. Both sides summon ancient heroes to help in the fighting, and Arcat's army is in great need. It's in great peril, and once again, probably Arcat is gonna make it, but maybe most of the people with him aren't, and he might have to go and get another army. But Harmast shows up, having returned from his Lightbringer quest, and who does he have but Taylor, the Laughing Warrior, the dead son of
Mm-hmm.
Arcat, who with Harmast, leads relief armies to help break Arcat's army out, which helps and leads to the final showdown in the City of Miracles
Mm-hmm.
on the Tower of Dreams. Uh,
It almost reminds me of like a Michael Moorcock story, right? Like
Very much,
Elric
very
going
much.
to meet someone in the at the top level of the Tower of Dreams.
Right,
Uh,
right. Um, and Arcat King Troll uh, stocks Nice Lure, the perfect one, or Gbaji, the deceiver. Although there are those who who were devotees of Nice Lore who said that it was clear that in fact Arcat had deceived everyone and was destroying the perfection that could have been, and that he is Gabaji. Um,
yeah.
who who knows? Only the survivor knows.
Right, and we only
And
know one person walks out of that tower, and the
right,
Bright Empire is destroyed.
right.
And whoever walks out of that tower claims to be Arcat.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where
But
this
it
room this room for interpretation comes in.
right, because it is not Arcat King Troll who walks out of the ruins of the Tower of Dreams. Um, it is someone who is recognized as Arcat, but no longer a troll, and once again transformed. Um, and some would say, oh well, maybe Gabaji, uh, this is Gabaji's final deception,
Mm-hmm.
his escape, that in fact he defeated Arcat. But the Orthodox, the Dragon Pass interpretation,
Mm-hmm.
the survivors of Arcat's army who witnessed this, is that Arcat slew Gabaji, Nicelor, the the bright deceiver, and just as Arcat had been dismembered, he dismembered his foe and had the pieces buried under spells and mountains of stone and entombed in various places, so that the living god would not be reassembled.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and um, and there was some cleanup. He
Mm-hmm.
cursed the land of Dorastor. which in some ways left it a wounded land rather than restoring it or trying to cleanse it further. He just leaves it a cursed and haunted land. And at this point, as someone who knows the deep secrets of the god realm and of many cults and traditions, both divine, spiritual, and
Mm-hmm.
sorcerous. Um, when he's saying curses, these things really wreak havoc.
Right, and there's just enough of Arcat's story that says, yeah, he probably could do this. But you know
Yeah,
who else could do it? Nicelor, the living god, could have done it
yeah,
to cement the deception that he was Arcat.
yeah.
So, and then he goes
So
and
yeah,
retires, essentially. He founds
right,
the empire around Ralios, and then
right.
eventually.
Well, and yeah, and really, I mean, it is through his force of will and personal code that uh, that uh, he really does not found things per se.
No, it
He
is just a
doesn't.
gravitas that causes
That's right.
people to go around
Right.
it. And it's interesting that only after a man whose entire mythic cycle is based around destruction only builds something after this final confrontation and through no direct effort on his own part. Again,
Right.
leading to the ambiguity of, was it Arcat or Gabaji who moved from the tower? Because Gabaji built things. Nicelor built things. That was his entire modus operandi, right? The order, the structure, the tyrannical order from the Sartarites' point of view.
Yeah.
But even from the Pelorians' point of view, right? The reign of Nicelor can be equated to the reign of Yelm, where everything was
Yes.
perfect as long as you were within the system.
Right.
As long as you were under Nicelor or Yelm's rule, you had a place and you had your eternal spot secured.
Yeah. And in Arcat's case, his most favored um, allies are the trolls,
Mm-hmm.
and everywhere there is a strong um, population of trolls. He gives the blessing for them to order things, to to be both the guardians and sort of the overseers of
Mm-hmm.
order in that in those lands. But his teachings and moral code are very pluralistic.
Mm-hmm.
They are not, and this is the evidence that um, cuts against him being this Arcat being Nicelor, in that there isn't this attempt to create a conformity. It is a sort of a patchwork
Mm-hmm.
of of people that are encouraged, maybe up to and including through the use of force to get along. But you have trolls, you
Mm-hmm.
have Orlanthi, you have Brestoli, and other Malchioni and Berthini, and also the Hikimi, the spirit animal people, all encouraged to live together, to cooperate, and he again, not commanding directly, but through sort of his prestige, through his aura of power, um, allows certain leaders to be able to take up regional control, to manage things for sort of a common good. In some ways, it's seen as, I think, by some as idyllic, but others are still afraid. And again, the trolls um, are monstrous. I mean, they eat everything, including you. potentially, and so it's called the Stygian Empire, or it's sort of the reflection instead of the bright empire. It's Arcat's dark
Dark
empire.
Empire, yeah.
Um, and he just spends his time in contemplation with family. Apparently, he has wives and children, um, and thus many descendants. Um, and um, and perhaps he continues to explore the hero realm, or perhaps he simply documents it for his followers. He is the most knowledgeable about the god realm of anyone of his time, and there he does teach disciples about the god realm. He essentially becomes the immortal, who is the patron of hero questing, and exploration of the god time by mortals. Um, and at the end of his life, he does not die a a quiet death or a violent death. He apotheosizes, uh, and steps into the god
Mm-hmm.
realm to become an immortal and an eternal immortal being. Um, at a And there is a particular place on the God plane where he would be found, um, called Statham Well. Um, and he is also associated with a constellation.
Mm-hmm.
The constellation of Arcat is still seen in the sky. Now, there's some question about whether or not there's all the stars are still there. Um, but the constellation is there. So there are these sort of eternal markers that keep his legend and story alive.
Kind of the
Um,
forefront of the Sartrite culture. This is the first major myth cycle after the God time for the
right,
Sartrite people. All
right.
right.
The
Oh,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
was.
No. Please.
So I was. Why
Okay.
are we talking about this? Why is
Why?
this important? Well, obviously we are talking about it because we are passionate about it and we love it. And I could just sit and listen to Evan for hours. We should put a fireside green screen behind you. I give you a nice glass of Cavatier. You could just swirl it and read from the book of, probably for you it'd be the book of Nicelar, you lunar loving.
I mean,
But here's the thing. This is the proto cycle that is now being played out once again in the Third Age. That's why this is important. The stories of Arcat and Gabaji not only are hero quests that your players can go on and interact with, but they are the foundation of the conflict between the Lunar Empire and Dragon Pass. Nicelor is not dead. As Evan called him, the living god. If you look at the lunar cults, there is the red goddess is not the only god that the Red Empire has brought back into existence. Nicelor, his lies or his riddles form the foundation for the illumination infection. Um, what would a pro-lunar call illumination?
well, I mean, it's an enlightenment.
And
It
the
is a
enlightenment
it is a
of
yeah,
the lunar empire, right? It's the
yeah.
Nicelorian riddles
Hmm.
that unlock your mind and allow you to see the path of the goddess, the path of the moon, the path that reconciles chaos with the world,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? Aside from all of the geopolitical reasons why Sartorites hate the Lunars, this is the core of the metaphysical reasons that Sartrite hates the Lunars. Sartrite religion, Sartrite culture has a very defined view of what chaos means and what chaos means to the world. Their gods fought and died and were reborn in this eternal cycle of battle against chaos. So the fact that the red goddess has used the foundations that Nicelor put in place, as well as the foundations that Arcat put in place, right? It's Arcat's hero quest exploration and his continual pushing of the boundaries. It's Harmast's use of the Lightbringer quest to bring back dead things and things from the god time back into our world of Glorantha that even allowed the Red Goddess to return, allowed the Cult of the Seven Mothers to do what they did, and allowed this reconciliation. So, in a way, Arcat and Gabaji are still the chthonic, the primeval, the foundational myths that are still being reenacted by all of the empires and peoples in Dragon Pass today. They're the proto mortal myths, if you will.
Right.
Temporal myths, myths of time.
Yeah, historic echoes of the eternal conflicts of the god time, and their reflections, and as you said, they're fractal. They as there's one historic cycle, and it leads to the second age, which is of a different cast, but it is built on and its trajectory in some ways is set by what happens in the first age, and then in the third age we seem to have a very parallel set of events lining up, leading us to the Hero Wars, which appear to be potentially as universe shaking and destructive as the Gabaji Wars, but they are not just a replay, because they also build on the trajectory and the developments of the second age, because Arcat, you can't draw a straight line from Arcat's experimental hero questing to the Seven Mothers without having the second age, because one of the things that Arcat set in his cult of hero questing was a set of guardians to protect the god realm and to test sort of the worthiness of people who would intrude and do the kinds of things that Arcat did. Because Arcat apparently understood, not only was it a path to power, but it was also dangerous. You could corrupt or disrupt things in the god time. But in the second age, the god learners locked away all the pathways to get to Arcat. They seemingly sealed him away from worshipers and from people who would pilgrimage to learn from him. And they smashed his cult, which is fragmented now into many different little sort of conspiracies and secret societies,
mystery cults,
who claim to have the great secrets, and maybe they have a part of one, or maybe they have a couple, but they are all rivals, and they all, they claim to know the true path to Arcat. But also, what the God learners apparently did not do was that they did not lock Arcat away from the world, because it is said that Arcat is coming back, and maybe multiple Arcats are coming back. And in fact, there is every reason to believe that Argrath
and Arcat
is Arcat. Argrath is simply a variant of the name Arcat, and it's not a coincidence. It's not just, hey, I'll name this guy Caesar. I think he is Arcat, at least in some way, and it's his destiny to play that role, and the red goddess in many ways is Nicelor reborn. She was illuminated by the spirit of Nicelor. She mastered the demon Gabaji, and learned the secrets of chaos. But there's more. It's not just a rerun. And so and that is the reality that Greg and his successors at Chaosium are putting before us in the Hero Wars.
Yep.
How will this play out? And there may be, maybe what the God Learners did was that not all of Arcat can escape. Maybe there are just fragments that are going into people. Maybe there is more than one Arcat out. Maybe there are people who are deluded and are just claiming that they are Arcat, but maybe there are multiple Arcats. Maybe, as has been said or written in King of Sartar, maybe there are multiple Argraths, and there are oftentimes, even certainly mythologically and even historically, maybe more than one person actually did something, but
That was
just the person we remember gets attributed. And so that is the world that your heroes are going into. That maybe you are Arcat.
I was going to say, maybe one of your characters takes on that role of Arcat, at least on the local level.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to talk about the God Learners because I have a wild theory about the God Learners and how it relates to Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, and we'll talk about that. I'll just tease that here. Evan, prepare for me to digress quite a bit. But I'd like to give Evan a couple of months. He puts together all of our outlines. I'm very grateful for that. I'm going to give him a couple of months to start putting together the second age outline, because next month Evan and I are going to do our review and walkthrough. We're going to show off some pieces of art from the Prosopedia, the first of the 10-volume series of the Gods of Glorantha. Evan was kind enough to get me a copy at Chaosium Con, and I'm hoping to return the favor for him at Gen Con and snag the Earth Cult and the Storm Gods books at Gen Con for you. Now, and then I think on the second, so that'll be our February episode. No, it's not January. That'll be our June episode. And I think for our July episode, what I'd like to do is take a step away from this temporal view and go through several of the new releases. I can't remember off the top of my head if we've done one of these before, so I don't write things down. I'm the talking initiate. Evan is the scholar. We're going to look at some Johnstown Compendium offerings and why you as players or as GMs should check these out. Just want to signal boost for some Johnstown Compendium people and talk about some of the cool things that we have purchased and possibly write them off as research for the show. So until next time, Evan, thank you so much for taking us on this journey, taking me with you. I always learn and then abuse what I have learned in our RuneQuest Glorantha game. Any final thoughts on Arcat and Gabaji?
I mean, these are not straightforward characters to understand.
Yeah.
They are multifaceted, and I think that's one of the things that sort of sets them apart from other literary figures that where things may be more clear cut, and for that they're deeply relatable in many ways, because they contain these multitudes, these things that we connect with and things that repel us, both in the villain and the hero. I mean, Arcat is a hero, but he's not he is not purely virtuous, and not purely connected to a morality that we would necessarily recognize. And Nicelor, Gbaji, there are these contradictions. This question of, can you have the light without darkness? Can you have a civil, a great civilization that is truly utopian without the destructive and oppressive elements? So I think that they are ways for us to think, more deeply, to tell, fun stories, to have exciting adventures at the table, but also to have those moments of thought, away from the table, in a way that makes it a much deeper experience. And so I'm incredibly grateful to Greg Stafford and his collaborators, as they have created and elaborated these stories, because I think that they speak to something very deep and artistic and meaningful for people.
Awesome. Well, until next month, thank you all for watching here, watching on YouTube. If you like what we're doing, please consider following us, liking here, giving us a thumbs up. It helps the algorithm say, hey, if people are looking for Glorantha material, this is where they should go. If you are not a member of the Iconic Production Patreon, please consider joining over at patreon.com/iconicproduction. It's where we hang out. If you join the Patreon, you get access to Evan's notes, you get access to the videos a week early, and you get access to the Iconic Production Discord channel, where we talk about Glorantha. Ludo and the God Learners are on there, so we're always talking about the God Learners material, ours, the Journal of Runic Studies. So come on over. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. I am JM. This is my co-host, Evan, and we will see you next month for more Exploring Glorantha. Have a good one.
We are all us.